Look where the laser is aiming there. The drop point is like there. Like, do you guys not look at it when you design a game? Sons of the Forest is better looking game than The Forest. But The Forest is much better video game than The Sons of the Forest. And here's why. What's up everybody, welcome to Viper Reviews The Sons of the Forest. Finally the moment we were all waiting for came and The Sons of the Forest is here. So after a few hours of playing, I thought I've been playing for like, I don't know, 10, 12 hours. I shift tapped the Steam to like open the Steam overlay and I see like I've been playing for 4 or like 6 hours, I don't remember. And I'm like, oh my god. Like how did I play for 5 or 6 hours and I'm already bored? Where in the previous parts I played for hundreds of hours as solo without being bored for single hour. Like not even a single moment in the forest was boring for me. You know, the few days passed, I still played the Sons of the Forest. Same thing kept happening. Like I was like boring. I was bored. I was staying on my base. I was looking at Kelvin. I was pissed at the Kelvin not doing anything that I'm asking for. After a few days, I was like, you know what? Maybe this game is bad, and I just don't know it. I'm just forcing myself to play this game. I'm like, let me go to the Steam reviews. Maybe the reviews are bad. The same thing happened in BF 2042. Like I was like, this game doesn't feel good, and I go to the Steam reviews, and I'm like, oh my god, everything is mostly negative. So I open the Steam reviews. Nope, everyone is like it's mostly positive or very positive. Everyone likes it. Everyone enjoys it. But I still kept like there's something wrong. Like I can't like put my finger on it. And oh my god, I finally downloaded The Forest after years and I realized what's wrong with this game. So one of the first thing I realized after loading the game and playing for a few minutes is the pacing. In Sons of the Forest, for example, like when you go down the hill after the helicopter crash, there's like a cave and like few bodies on the spikes that are dead, few like soldiers or something. And immediately at that moment, there was like 5 or 6 enemies, and they started attacking me. Like from the literally first moment of the game loading, you're already interacting with the enemies, and there's too many of them. Same thing, like when I loaded the forest, slowly but surely you start seeing them. And when they see you, they first like, oh my god, what? Who is this? And they panic just as much as you panic when you see them for the first time. You're like, oh my god, what is this? This is an enemy. Do I kill him? Do I go for? I don't know how to kill. This is my first time playing the game, right? They have the exact same feeling when they see you. They look, oh my god, they back off, like they run away. Like they stay at the distance and they look at you. For as long as you wait there, they're gonna look at you. I even tested at some point. I'm like, I'm turning around to see if they're gonna attack me if I'm not looking at them. Nope. They are panicked and shocked just as much as a new player would be panicked if they see an enemy in a video game for the first time. So pacing is one of the things, in my opinion, needs to be looked at. And like when I first loaded the Forest, the first one, and play with my friend, it was like a movie. I know it was like RNG. Every enemy is like a RNG spawn in this game that come towards you. But I wish I had the footage that I could show to you, but it was like a movie. Everything started slow and just gradually went up to the roof. Like we started with almost no enemies at all, and by the time that it was like second night, and we had like a raft, which I'm gonna talk about it. There's no raft in this game. We had a base and a raft, and like couple of or three or four, 2 or 3 big enemies, like those armies, and are they called fats and armies? Like they, I don't know their name, but you know what I'm talking. They're like big enemies that is they spawn and they have so much power to destroy your base. And me and my friend were first we started to fighting them on the shore. We couldn't, we had to back off. They were like damaging us like crazy. Finally we jump on the raft and we slowly back away from them. And in front of us, like a movie and like a nightmare, they just start destroying everything we built so far in that. like in the couple of days in game we had. Like even though it was the worst feeling to have your base destroyed, it was one of the greatest moments in gaming for me and for my friend. We still talk about that moment that like slowly but surely enemies like increased in power. And it was like in 2 days that we like seeing the big boss, like big enemies that mutants that came and destroyed our base, and we couldn't do anything. We just backed up in a raft and we just saw we were just absorbing them from distance. One of the first things you realize in Sons of the Forest is how much more detailed and like well thought the mutants are. Like generally speaking, you could tell that developers really work on to like making them with more details on them, like with how they how their clubs are made, or how they have like more accessories on them. But one thing that I could tell is mostly different when it comes to how they look is mutants, generally speaking, it looks like they have suits. Like it doesn't look like they were living there long before you with nothing, no technology or anything. Like it looks like there's more of them with suit looking like variables on them instead of how they usually should be. Like in the forest, they're mostly like naked with like women with the boobs out or anything like that. But in Sons of the Forest, it looks like they're mostly like they have some sort of like clothing on them that like, and it reduces like how they should be scary for you. Like if they're like mostly naked with weird looking bodies, that's more scary than what I usually see in Sons of the Forest, but that isn't the biggest problem I have with mutants. It's the combat that I'm not really enjoying with them, which is like, it's very important when it comes to video games. If the combat isn't satisfying, it kinda like takes the goal away for you to keep playing the game. And again, like first I couldn't tell what's wrong, but one of the things in the previous force is when they attack you or you attack them, you could always break their animation if they are just normal human mutants like running around. If you like hit them with your axe or your katana used to be like the main weapon if I remember correctly. Like in the forest, the katana was I think the most powerful like melee weapon, and I used like it's a free tool, like you don't lose them, so you kept losing katanas. So when they attack you and jump on you on the forest, if you're fast enough, you could just click and like hit them, stop them from motion. What happens in the forest is like you hit them, instantly they hit you back and you hit each other, and because they have more damage than you have, most of the time they just kill you without you being able to do anything. And this one kind of depends on the melee weapon you use, but the blocking system doesn't really block them either. Unless you're using the best axe in the game, the blocking doesn't really work. It kind of does, but it kind of doesn't either. So that way combat is like kind of frustrating. And another thing was like one time I was like standing right in front of my base or inside it, I don't remember, and they just come in. I had a small window on my base, and they just ignored it. They just jumped into from the window inside the base like it's nothing. They have like perfectly vault animation to jump inside your base if you have windows. Not to mention, there's no door locks. You can't lock your doors in like you used to be able to in the forest. Also, running feels is slow too. So when they like charge towards you, you still can do it, but like you used to be able to like dodge sideways. So they like when they run towards you and they at the last second they jump on you, you used to be able to like easily go left and right and like horizontally dodge them. But it feels like kind of finicky with how the I feel like the sprinting is slower, especially like because the map is so big. I feel like the running speed is very slow compared to how big the map is. Another thing is the heavy attack. When you hold your mouse button to like do a heavy attack on them in the forest, for example, in Katana, you could just hold the button, and the moment you release the button, you just do your heavy attack. It's not like that here. If you hold the button, it's just gonna do the heavy attack anyway. So you have to even think about it more to like time your attacks on them if you're gonna do heavy attacks. Another problem I have is that you can't really tell if they attacked anything or not unless it's so heavily damaged that like visually you see the logs are different. Like in the forest, you could just go in the base or around it. If there's anything damaged, visually there's an indicator on the bottom of the screen that you could see, okay, this base is damaged, I need to fix it. But in the Sons of the Forest, you have no idea. And another semi problem that I had, when they kill you and your base is near the shore, it's kind of a good unique idea when that you spawn in the water. After a while, it gets repetitive to do the same thing. And on top of that, if like one time I died like 5 times back to back in the water before even be able to escape the water, because there was like shark there, and when you die, they don't just despawn, they're already in there. You just die, spawn back in the same place. A shark kills you, you just die again, spawn back, dies you, he kills you again. So it just rinse and repeats until the shark is like finally leaves the area. Speaking of fighting with the mutants, another thing I realized is the visibility and the height system that there's in the Sons of the Forest. It's kind of similar to the Forest, but it's much like worse in some ways. Again, I realized it when I went back to the forest, is that when you crouch and you go into the bush and you go into the bush or out of it, you could like visually see that the visibility that decreases and increases. So you could use that. It's a very useful like visual indication on your monitor that tells you that are they going to see you, are they not going to see you. But in Sons of the Forest, it's not really understandable. It's either there or not there. And oh boy, when they attack you and they lower your health, it's like biggest pain in the game to like increase your health back up again. Because even if you're full health and full water, that those are like two things that your character basically needs to survive. There's nothing else you could do. Even if you're full health, I'm sorry, full water and full food, your health just stays as it is. So you have to use either like you have to eat food, I think, which is like slowly increases your health, or you have to like use meds, which I feel like if you're full water and you're full food, doesn't it make sense that at least over time slowly like increase your health? Oh boy, Kelvin. This is one of the most frustrating part of the Sons of the Forest. But look at that. I went to open the door for my dog. That's Kelvin for you. I don't need any more explanation. Especially if you're playing solo, Kelvin is pain in the ass. First of all, most of the time when you ask him to do something, he's first going to like agree with you, then immediately he's going to say no, I'm not doing it, or like I don't know what's wrong with him. I usually cut trees down and like even sometimes like take them and make like put them closer to the base for him to like get it to the base, like to the holders and whatnot. He like ignores the closest logs and goes all the way to the other side of the island and like starts chopping trees or like does some weird stuff, and he takes like 1 or 2 logs and instantly goes back to inside the base and starts resting for 5 to 10 minutes. Like if you ask him to bring you logs, I think he brings like 2 or 3 logs per every 10 to 15 minutes, which is like incredibly frustrating when you're cutting the entire forest and like for him to like only bring you 3 logs. And immediately after every work, he just goes back to inside of the base, sits on the chair and rests for so many minutes that from the chair that doesn't even give the player any stamina gain or anything or any rest. Like what's the point of having chair in your base if your like rest meter or whatever it is doesn't go up? And on top of that, he's very annoying with the doors because most of the time he just walks into your base and he just leaves the door open, which doesn't really matter. Just like I said before, there's not even a door lock that you could lock your door for the mutants to not go inside. But the biggest problem the Kelvin has, in my opinion, is the fact that he starts cutting trees without like looking that you're building something there. Like he 2 times in a row, I build a tree base, which takes like 70 or 90 logs, and that takes like I don't know, like 2 hours in game, like 2 hours in real life to take that many logs and cut them and bring them with all the stupidity of the Kelvin. And there's like hundreds of trees literally 5 meters away from the tree base. He directly goes under the tree base and like 2 hits, the entire base is done. And my last save is, I don't know, like half an hour ago. Even if it's like 5 minutes ago, that's like 5 minutes of work that you have to redo again because he just destroyed your tree base. Base building. I don't know where to start. If somebody asks me why you play the Forest or Sons of the Forest, I think for me the most important thing is building a base that could resist the waves of the attack that will come day after day, which will like eventually they will get stronger and stronger the more you survive in the island. Unfortunately, on the Sons of the Forest, the path that developers took for the base building is completely reinventing the wheel from the ground up and totally unnecessary in my opinion. First of all, the most of the things you want to do in this game, there's almost no way of figuring them out yourself. Like for example, I wanted to do like bridge between two tree bases. Only way I figured that out is because I went to a YouTube video and like learned it from there. So that, in my opinion, is one of the biggest like mistakes that they made is they made the building system in a way that if you want to do anything, you have to go watch a video or go like Google it to see how you're going to do it. Or does it exist in the game? Does it not exist in the game? You have no idea. You have to like go online, search for it to see if it's in the game or not. Like for example, how do you cut the walls from your base? That took me like 1 day to figure out. In the forest, there's a square that you could choose in your logbook and you could like increase and decrease its size and just cut anything from anywhere you like. In the Sons of the Forest, you first of all there's no option to cut it from the like if you're trying to cut the floor above you, there's no option to cut it. You have to go above the roof and cut it from down there. And the second is like you only have the option to cut from the middle of the logs. Or when I was trying to build a wall defense around my base, after so many attempts of trying to build a gate for those walls, I went to YouTube videos and I realized there's like a 20-minute video of explaining how you could like glitch the logs and basically build a ramp into your base through your walls because there's no option to put the gate, because there's no option to make gates for your walls. Also, I feel like there's so many things removed from building, or they're like made in a very frustrating ways. For example, there's no rafts in this game, so you cannot create rafts like you could do in the forest. There's like three different, basically boats and rafts that you could build in the forest. Like two of them you could use it as a solo. One of them is so big that you need another teammate for it. There's no such a thing as that in the Sons of the Forest. It's completely removed. Just like the blueprints are kind of removed. There's some of them in the left side of the logbook, but they're mostly like very simple things. Trophy system is removed as well, I think. I'm not sure. Like in the forest, when you kill an animal, you collect the trophy, which is like usually it's the head. And you could just mount it in your base and like, it's a reminder of the time that you did that. It's a memory. And things like stashes don't really stash as much as they should. For example, bone basket, like in the forest, previous forest, you could have so many of them in one basket. And or like if you have a arrow basket or arrow storage in the previous forest, you could have like you could store so many arrows in one basket. And while you're in your base, you could just craft these and like store them for later. In Sons of the Forest, you only could like put, I don't know, 10, 15, 20. I don't know the exact number, but you could visually see it's not as much as it should be. Especially considering how many bone parts a mutant drops when you cook them. You're probably in I don't know, in few days you're gonna have so many baskets for or storage for your bones and your arrows. And when it comes to stashing the small rocks, it doesn't really make sense that there is no storage system for it. Yeah, you could like put the small rocks on your shelves, but who would like store rocks on the shelf? Like you should have some sort of basket or storage system, just like you have for the bones, for the small rocks. Because when the winter hits, you almost cannot see small rocks at all. it's almost like completely gone because they're all hidden below the snow, and you really need them. Like they're very useful things to find in the world, especially for making arrows. There's few others like problems with logs as well and your axe. I think they could be sorted out later, but I feel like I need to share them. One of them is the main axe that you find it later is the almost every time you try to hit a tree, it hits once and it just bugs out for a few seconds, then it starts hitting them again. Also, you cannot customize your stuff, your melee weapons and things like that like you used to be able to in the forest. And now that you drop the logs, you destroy the tree, there are other problems I see with the logs. One of them is I'm 100% sure that logs disappear, at least on the at least if you've made a multiplayer session, the logs 100% disappear after a while. So if you've cut a tree and you ask the Kelvin to like put them in a log holder, while you're cutting the tree, you could like turn around and see like there was like 5 logs, there's now 2 logs where you ask the Kelvin to put them. They just disappear. I don't know how that happens. It's very frustrating. Also, I feel like logs roll too much as well, which is like it's realistic, but it's like it's annoying in the game. They most of the time they just roll and slowly go inside the ocean or like they disappear from your vision and you just missed so many logs because they slowly roll away. I wish there was like some sort of unrealistic mechanic that after like few rolls they stop. And also they have very weird physics mechanics in the water. Sometimes if they hit the water, it's impossible to recover them. They're gonna just bounce around for minutes. And on top of them, and on top of that, you cannot carry logs in the water. You could kind of like spam the S button and like the E button at the same time and slowly pull them away from the water and finally take them out. But while they're in the water, it's just impossible to pick them up. Very minor feeling I have with the axe as well is that I feel like in Sons of the Forest, your character hits the trees, like tries to cut the trees faster than it should be. In the forest, I wish like it required less hits, but it took longer for your character to hit the tree, just so that it doesn't like sound very unrealistically that your character is like smashing the hell out of the tree. I don't know, it's just my opinion about how fast your character hits the trees. And while we're on the topic of the axes, I feel like the first axe you have is completely useless because if you watched any YouTube video, you know the moment you spawn, there's a spawn for a better axe. You get that, and the first axe is just there for the rest of the eternity on your stash. I just there's no use for it. Like I don't know. I wish there was. I wish either it was harder to gather the better axe, or there was some sort of use for the smaller axe that you have on your inventory. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is that because of the building mechanic that they put in this game, there is so many small parts of the logs that are just wasted. And when you build a base, when you put a blueprint and you put the log in it, it just spits out the rest of the log, which is kind of useful if you have like a fireplace, if you wanna use it as a on your fireplace. But you only need like 4 for every god knows how many hours. I only use like 4 small parts, which is like a one or two half small logs, but I have like pile of small logs like stashed on top of each other that are completely useless in my opinion. There's no use for them, at least as of now. I don't know if there's any use for them. So when you build the stuff, there's like so many unused and like cut in half logs all over the place. Inventory system was very frustrating. Now they kind of made it better by adding keybinds later, but it's still, I feel like there's so much work that needs to be done in the inventory system. Firstly, there's always like different types of foods you have in your inventory. Like sometimes you have like fishes, sometimes you have like meat. So you can't always like keybind your food that you have in your inventory. I mean, you can, but it's just tedious to always just change your keybind for the new food that you have in your inventory. Therefore, that most of the times when you try to eat the cooked food in your inventory, you have to just open it and eat it instead of keybinding it, which is very frustrating. It reminds me of the reloading your magazine in Escape from Tarkov when you have to like tab and open your inventory and load your magazines while you're looking at a blurred screen and you have no idea what's going out there. The same thing happens in the Sons of the Forest, that when you eat something or you choose something to do in your inventory, it's cool that for the first time when you see these animations, but after a while it just gets repetitive. And especially if you're in a combat, you're just stuck there eating something or building something. Meanwhile, like they're out there, they're just attacking you and you have no idea what's going on. Also, sometimes inventory doesn't understand that if you want the full inventory or you only want the backpack. So if you tap the inventory, for some reason it just takes out your backpack and you're like, oh my god, put it down and open the inventory again. Plus, the mouse speed and the panning speed is slowest thing in the earth when it comes to video gaming. Not really, but it's just so frustrating. It takes so long to like pan around, like slowly go to left, slowly go to right. And also your mouse for some reason is not the same sensitivity that you have in your like desktop. I think it's a different mouse. It's like a different sensitivity in your inventory. So it takes like 4 seconds to go to all the way right to take 2 sticks, come all the way to left like to take, I don't know, something else to combine them together. Plus, there is no description for items that you have in your inventory. For example, they're like all the berries that you collect. I wish there was a way to understand like what they do if you just eat them, because like I ate so many blueberries to just realize what they do. I don't think they do anything. They don't fix your hunger. They don't fix your water. Even if they do, I don't realize it. It's so like so small that I don't see any change. Plus that gear that you see on your inventory that shows like different combinations you could do, it changes from time to time that you discover things. So let me give like very simple example. If you want to do arrows, for example, okay, let me give like a very unrealistic example, right? Let's say you want to make arrows, right? You don't know how to make arrows until you put the first necessary recipe to make the arrow. So if you, let's say you put a big rock in your inventory, right, in the middle, it's your first time, you don't know how to make arrows. How do you make arrows? You don't know. You have to put things one by one to just finally check the gear to see what things you could make with them. So overall, I wish you could just turn off the animations in your inventory. So every time you're creating something, it doesn't show the animation over and over again. And you could just ignore the animations and just leave the inventory. So when, for example, if you eaten a fish in your inventory, you're just stuck there eating the fish. I wish you could just press tab and leave the inventory and still eat the fish. So other minor problems that I have is, I can't believe I'm saying this, is that the map is too big. Now you might be like, wait, how is that a bad thing? Isn't it better to have more things to explore? Well, yes, but at the same time, no. The same problem happened in, again, Battlefield 2042, is that everybody thought the map being big is good thing until they played on it. And it took them years to go from a destination to another destination. There was a cave near the base that I built in the Sons of the Forest. I was like, let me go explore this cave and come back to my base. It probably took me like 40 minutes to go to that cave and come back to my base. Especially like in the wait, like I got attacked by the mutants. The map is too big. There's like not much anything in between those destinations. Like if there's a cave and another cave in between them, it's just a jungle in between them. There's like nothing to explore other than just trees and like terrain, right? I don't know. I feel like that's another thing that I was like, I wish there was a faster animation for your sprinting, because it takes so, not only it would make easier to dodge the mutants when they jump you, when they charge you, it makes it easier to travel in between the like point of interests. Fish trap is broken, which I'm sure they're gonna fix it. It doesn't like catch anything. Also, helicopter crash is funny. I don't know if you realize it. Like it just bounces like a cat ball. It's like boom, boom, boom. More quality of life changes. I feel like should be, one of them should be the ability to give names to your saves. Like if you do more than 3 or 4 saves, it's gonna be so confusing to know which one is what. So you cannot name your saves. Your GPS shakes like crazy in your hand unless you have another weapon in the other hand. So GPS is kind of useless unless you're holding something else. And pretty much always your half is stamina. Like even if I wake up from sleep, eat something, drink something, and I move 5 meters away, I'm half the stamina, like half my stamina is gone. I don't know why. I don't know why they did that. Especially in the winter, like even like completely like 50% of your stamina is gone. I know you could kinda increase them by eating like energy drinks and things like that, or making like better gear sets, but for what it is as a default, I think you lose so much of your stamina literally at the beginning of the day. Maybe it's okay to have 50% stamina at the end of the day when you're going to sleep, that it like forces you to go to sleep. But when you just wake up and you have like 70% and 5 minutes later it's like 50%, I don't know, it's just annoying. Also, you cannot load saves if you're in the game, so you have to go back to the menu and load back again, which is another like frustrating thing. If something happens and you had no control on it, you're like, okay, I'm gonna reload my save. You have to leave the game, leave the session, go back and load back again, instead of just being able to load it from either your escape menu or the bed that you have in your base. Your character, for some reason, when gets tired, he starts whistling. This is funny. I thought I would include that. Like, I wish instead of like doing instead of that, he made the same noise that happens in the forest. The nights are not as scary and like cold as they were in the forest. You could visually see in the forest that when it gets night, it's really cold and it really pushes you to be like, oh my god, I should have made the base. This was my first day in the game and I just wasted it instead of making a small base so I could just survive the night. I had to like go boom, 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 boom to see like where I have to shoot finally. Look, man. So for the next part of this video, I'm going to have a crosshair in the middle of the screen for you guys. And the reason why I have that is because the vast majority of the first person shooter games out there is because vast majority of the famous first person shooters out there, they have your character always aiming either directly at the center of your monitor or somewhere very close to that center. Like for example, in Counter-Strike, your character always aims at the middle of the screen. Always. No matter what happens, your bullet is going on the middle of your screen. The recoil only kicks the camera up, so you just pull your mouse down to resist the recoil. Or for example, in Rainbow Six Siege, again, the character's aim point is in the middle of the screen. Same thing kinda happens in some Sons of the Forest. You could see now that I have a crosshair in the middle of the screen, it's easier to see that the bullet actually goes where the middle of the screen is. But it only is accurate when it comes to guns, which is very confusing. Which is very confusing if you have a laser on it. Because just like you see in the video, the laser points completely in a different location, but the bullets always go to the middle of your screen. Another big problem I have with the weapon system in Sons of the Forest is that almost every single arrow type and the weapons that come with it shoot like in completely different spots. Now, you could kind of like ignore this problem and say like, you know what, I'm gonna play this game so much that I'm gonna finally learn where each arrow on which weapon goes. But that's kind of a silly way of learning something in the video game. Instead of it being made in a proper way, where you either choose like the middle of the screen as the hitting point, or you have some sort of way of telling the player like that you make it obvious where the arrow is going to go when you release the button. For example, in the previous forest, there's like a small wooden part below your bow that you know that always it's the aiming point where the arrows are going to hit. Also, I feel like there's too much bullet drop in this game. You could like stand 5 meters like away from a rabbit and completely miss him by like 20 centimeters. Meanwhile, in the forest, you could just snipe a bird while it's flying in the air. I feel like they're both kind of at the end of the spectrum. I wish they were like both at the middle, so you can't snipe a bird, but at the same time you could at least hit a rabbit in front of you. And when you don't have a proper location for the projectile to hit, you have some confusing weapons like slingshot that are totally useless because it shoots way too high, also on the left side of the monitor. So if you're aiming directly at something, it's going to shoot to the left of it. This doesn't make sense because if it was real life, you could just adjust the part that you're pulling to the left and right and like horizontally choose where you want the rock to go. But in Sons of the Forest, it's always going to hit the left of the aiming point. And the reason for that is because it's already trying to shoot on the middle of the screen. The problem is that your character is holding the slingshot on the right side of the crosshair. And that is why you always see it shoot in the left. One more thing that frustrates me when I'm using the weapons in the game is that every time you crouch and stand up, or when you look up or down, again, the point that your character is aiming changes on your monitor. So for example, if you're sitting on the bottom of a hill and there's a mutant on top of it, and you're crouching for like better accuracy or like being hidden, you almost have to like completely look on the sky. You almost have to completely look at the sky just so you could like aim at the mutant. I don't like that your aim changes like on your screen compared to like what your stand is as your character. Imagine if Counter-Strike or Rust or any other first-person shooter game that when you sit down, your character pulls the iron side to the bottom of your screen instead of the middle of it. So it's like top half of your screen is just wasted because you have to now aim even higher than you should. I dislike how your character holds the stunt gun as well. Like he completely goes into a gangster mode with a weapon that has like a worst accuracy and range compared to others. Like instead of aiming with the worst gun in the game, now you had like gangster in it to like hope that you hit it. Come on, why are you holding it sideways? Just aim. There's like iron sight on top of the gun. Just aim with it. It's not all negatives though. Like I don't want this video to come out as a completely negative video towards like Sons of the Forest. In my opinion, there are some things that I love in this game. For example, the fact that you could dismantle your build and like take the items away is a awesome change. Graphics are phenomenal. Like there is no questions about graphics in this game. And the fact that it runs perfectly well, I haven't heard anyone having problem with the optimization in this game. They have a good record on like how perfect the size of their game is too. Like First Force came out at like, if I remember correctly, it was like 500 megabyte or something. It was like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago that the first Force came out. It's 500 megabyte and that big of a game doesn't make any sense. Like compare Call of Duty with the washed up graphics in the multiplayer, not single player though, multiplayer, and how many gigabytes you need to download, and like the first Force being like 500 megabyte, like it just blew my mind. So this one is obviously like bigger size than the Force, but there's no question about the graphics. Nahati is a good addition. I think everybody loves her. No complaint about that. Seasons are awesome. I wish it took them longer to change season because like I think you could see like the winter in few hours of playtime. So maybe if that was longer, you could change it in the settings. Or you could like increase the season times if you want to like customize the multiple or any session you're making. But on default, it happens faster than it should be in my opinion. But it's cool. The seasons are awesome. Winter looks awesome. The summer is okay-ish. You know, it's a summer, what you can do. The spring and fall, they all look beautiful. I have nothing to say for seasons. Animal injury animations, like before they die, it's such a good addition to the game as well. It's like you know that you killed the animal. It's not just another AI that you just shot it down. Every animal that you kill, if you don't instantly finish them, they have an animation that lasts few seconds that it's awesome. Your character movement is so much better than the first forest. So it's like there's years of progress in the development. Like that's how it feels. In the forest, your character you could just spam space and like it feels like you're floating on the air. This game has very good character movements. I love it. The only problem, like I said before, I have is just I feel like it's not like really problem. I feel like it's your character is slower than it should be compared to the world that we're living in. Weapons are awesome. I have problems with them, but overall, compared to the first bars, there's so many more weapons and they look good as well. It's not just like, for example, in the forest, there was like one or two. For example, in the forest, the only realistically anything close to the weapon like firearm you had, I think was the flintlock and the flare gun. But it's so lovely to see there's like different pistols in the Sons of the Forest. I love it. I maybe there are some people that don't like it. I think it's perfect. I wish they added more. Like honestly, I wouldn't mind if I found an M4 in this game. Like it would be one of the best things to find. Like a simple M16 and maybe a suppressor, and it's very rare to get. Like very rare to like find the ammo for it. I would love it if they do something like that. So I have no problem with the weapons. There's crossbow. There's like there's different bows. I love it. There's nothing I could say against the guns in this game other than how they aim and where they shoot and how they move when you're crouching and standing up and looking up and down. There's no problem with the weapons. I hope you guys liked the video. See you guys on the next one. Dead. They don't even realize if there's no sound. Look, he's alive. And he's shot. There you go, that's the proof that they don't realize they're getting shot at with the silencer.